Hey, so for this week, I'm going to start we read Maclaren and Foucault. It was interesting to read these texts, especially this week, as I think all of us are getting closer to actually preparing for our classrooms. And I have some of the other teachers from the school sending me what syllabi look like and, going over more specifically what expectations are set in place at the school and the norms for the school, because I think each school does have their own set of norms, or as or as Maclaren likes to talk about, these ideas of rituals. And um, the chapter is entitled "Education as a Cultural System," and I think there's something to that. And I think that as I'm because despite slacking for this week's reading, I am working on my final paper and trying to think through all of these ideas that we have spent this summer kind of exploring, and a lot of time I've just spent questioning more than I've come to any conclusions. um, I think that one of the big takeaways from all of these theories, and Maclaren especially, is that the school does a lot more than just teach a curriculum. And I think it's easy to say that and recognize that, but in terms of the rituals that we become so accustomed to, I don't think we realize how ingrained we are by, what different when a teacher stands in a certain position, or when a certain tone of voice, or a bell ringing, or announcements coming on, or, any of those things. I saw that some people, talked about what that looked like for when they had students who chose to not stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And I remember back to one of our first education classes, whenever I think about ritual, how, we talk about that school as a game, and it's a game that's set a lot of times for certain students and certain cultures to succeed. And I've heard so many stories of teachers taking actions of students as disrespectful, or not looking them in the eye. And I worked pretty heavily. I interned in a FYO class where it was all ESOL learners. So they were all, I think, except one student, they were all from Korea. And when I was working with the professor at UGA who was in charge of the class, she's like, it took me a few semesters working with them to understand what even just speaking out loud in a classroom looks like to them, and what it means to them, and how, I sit here and say I want to build this community, and I have this idea in my head of what it's going to take to build that community. But I know that my population is going to be very culturally diverse, and community is going to look different to them, and it's going to feel different to them. And so just thinking about these rituals, moving into that space of, recognizing what I see as necessary parts of school, what parts of school are necessary because other people have decided they're necessary, and just kind of internally, what does that mean for my students? And then that kind of translates into Foucault, who, and with his Docile Bodies, where we see how, I don't want to say easy, but how naturally it is that we are slowly turned into these machines almost, and behave in ways that we don't even realize that we're behaving in. And I think you, Dr. Burke, and Dr. Cater have both kind of messed with that dynamic for us in the classroom spaces without always telling us up front, but just, I remember one of the papers I think it was this summer, I don't remember which week it was, but you were like, you all tried to tie these ideas together from these, I think it was last week, so we had the 3 different readings, and you guys tried to make connections, and then you felt, I could see through your writing that you felt upset if you didn't get to those connections. He's like, you never said that we had to do that. So I think there's something to that we've, become so accustomed to. Oh, teachers are giving us readings, they're supposed to all go together, and if they don't, then clearly it's on us for misinterpreting it. And that's a small example, but an example still of how, how from 12, 16, many years of school we've come to believe those things. In the book I'm reading, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, will be the first book I teach in one of my classes, and a lot of the imagery and symbolism, I think the machinery in Foucault stood out to me, because reading that alongside this text, it talks a lot. You get a lot of this machinery imagery, and the novel, it refers to machinery as, kind of taking away a humanness and turning people and individuals and then like groups of people into like their internal thoughts are gone, and they're acting because that's, just so ingrained, like, oh, this is what we're supposed to do, we're going to keep doing it. And so I think it was good to read Foucault, and I think it helped me read my novel, but I think it also is helping me think of like, well, are there certain things that I do want to be ingrained into my kids and that are like a good thing for them to maybe, learn that this is how we're going to, like, how we are going to behave, and where is that, can that be positive? Is it always negative? Or, what that looks like in different spaces. So I think that probably had a lot less to do with the readings and a lot more to do with just me thinking about setting up my classroom next week and what I actually want that to look like. And both McLaren and Foucault kind of reminded me how easy it is to neglect little things happening in the classroom, even though those are the ones that are going to stick with the kids moving forward.